Get 6 months of local news for just $2. You get unlimited access to the news and information you need to stay connected to your community. Visit inforum.com/subscribe to get 6 months of local news for just $2.
You're listening to Plain Talk, the voice of North Dakota politics. I'm your host, Rob Port. If I sound distracted, it's because I've been busy covering this story all morning. I'm joined by my co-host, Chad Oban.
He's right of center, I'm left of center, both sides of the political spectrum.
I think it's cathartic. I think it's a necessary and proper debate. I'm glad we're having it.
And honestly, we have to do better.
Okay, I don't know why I'm getting blamed for this, right? Welcome to Plain Talk. We're back after the holidays. Happy to be back. I missed you, Chad. Over the
Rob,
podcast.
you know, I was thinking I missed you as well. I hope you had a wonderful holiday, good new year, and here we are.
Yeah, we're back at it, and boy, a lot going on. I mean, right after the first of the year, the NDGOP's all sorts of interesting things happening. In fact, I got a line on who their keynote speaker might be. And I don't know, as we're recording this, my article about it hasn't published yet. It'll probably be up by the time this publishes. But it's going to be Royce White, apparently. Well, he's been invited. I guess he's not confirmed. Royce White, Minnesota. He was a House candidate in 2022, U.S. Senate candidate in 2024. Also came under scrutiny for spending campaign funds at strip clubs and stuff. So it's kind of interesting.
Family values, baby. Family values.
Self-described as anti-Semitic, transphobic. I got to tell you, for a party that's already struggling to get all their candidates to the convention and get people to support the convention financially, not sure that guy's going to help. Anyway, that's not what we're here to talk about. Today's episode, there's a theme to today's episode. We're going to have two guests. Normally we have one guest, but today we're going to have two guests because it's all about Fargo. Fargo's going to have a mayoral race, and it's kind of a I don't know what you want to say, kind of a change for Fargo. There's not going to be an incumbent mayor in this race. Mayor Mahoney, current mayor, incumbent mayor, Mayor Tim Mahoney, he's term limited. He's been at the helm of the city for a long time. And before that was on the city commission. But he's out now. He can't run again. So we have two candidates who have officially announced so far, although I have a feeling it's not going to end at two. And we're going to start with one of those candidates who is a familiar name to the Plain Talk audience, and I think statewide, given his leadership in the legislature. It's current state senator Josh Boschee, who I still to this day want to describe as a representative, but he is a senator, former House Minority Leader, current state senator Josh Boschee, who now would like to be mayor of Fargo. Josh, welcome to the show.
Hey guys, good to be here as always.
Tell us why do you want to be mayor of Fargo?
Well, as you alluded to, with it being an open seat, it's a ripe opportunity to bring a new direction to the city of Fargo. I've spent the last few months discerning it. Rob, you got wind of some conversations I had, and so it had a column a couple months ago. And so especially since that column, people have been reaching out, either encouraging me or sharing their thoughts on what needs to happen in our city. And so,
just for everybody listening, leak more things to Rob Port. It helps. Yeah, that helps.
Well, he can certainly get candidates moving. That's for sure. It's no longer just discernment. It had to get to action after that. But no, it was good. And like I said, I've been talking to folks, and I think folks are just kind of tired of the status quo. We are the biggest city in the state. We are an economic engine, an entrepreneurial gemstone throughout the region. And people want to be proud of our city. And I think, on top of things happening nationally, frustrations that happen, they just get a little disappointed when we see a city commission right now kind of being dysfunctional and not really moving us forward, just kind of dealing with problems as they approach them.
So Josh, you talked about, first of all, congratulations on getting in the race, and thank you. I think it's always brave when people put their names on the ballot. So thank you for that. You talked about the city. It's time for change in the city. I mean, you have been representing the city in Bismarck for a decade. I mean, Rob can't even figure out what chamber you're in. Maybe once you're mayor, it'll be easier for him. But why are you the guy? Like, why are you the person that can bring change to the city versus some other complete outsider, for example?
Yeah. No, great question. And really it comes down to my leadership style. anyone that's worked with me knows that I lead through engagement. I lead through collaboration. I am, you know, from the time being elected, not only did I get elected because I went and talked to voters on their doorsteps, in their driveways, in their living rooms, but also throughout my legislative career. We have regular weekly updates that go out during session. We do legislative town hall forums once a month during the session. In the interim, we do regular updates to our constituents and our neighbors, because I'm elected to represent folks and I need to know what they're thinking and also give them the information that they need to know about what I'm doing as their elected representative or senator. And so as mayor, that's how I would lead. I think a lot of what happens in the city of Fargo happens in City Hall, and we have great staff there, really dynamic people trying to do some good things. But the commission, or hopefully for me, the future, the council with the new mayor, has the opportunity to set a direction for Fargo, a strategic plan in no other nomenclature, and then have the staff implement that. And our job then is to guide them and to do checkpoints to make sure outcomes are being met. It's not our job to sit in their department meetings and manage personnel issues or deal with the minutia of the work that they're supposed to be doing. And so my leadership style, I think, is the reason, we need a new generation and a new direction for Fargo.
You referenced dysfunction, which I got to tell you. So I don't, and full disclosure, I don't live in Fargo, neither does Chad, so I guess this is a couple of outsiders looking in. But like you said, I mean, Fargo's a very important community for North Dakota. It's our largest community. They have an outsized impact on our state's economy, tax revenues, even things like crime trends. I mean, Fargo has a big impact on that. So, but let me ask you this. You said dysfunction. I perceive that as well, because sometimes some of those council meetings are a mess. It's, commission members, hurling attacks at one another, or getting into dust-ups with members of the public who are there to speak. It's not great. So I guess that's my perception of the dysfunction. When you say dysfunction, what do you mean?
No, I think along the same lines, primarily, with the way the commission is communicating. First of all, a lot of the frustration people have is they're finding out about things right before a meeting, right? Because of the agenda having to be a certain amount of time ahead, and that's the only way they find out about stuff. Or citizens find out about, a big road project, an interchange on the interstate that's going to be near their home by getting a letter the Thursday before Labor Day weekend saying, this is the opportunity to provide feedback. I think we can do more direct engagement, get out and talk to folks, talk about what is development in South Fargo or the core neighbors or even North Fargo look like. And then you look at the way that they communicate with one another. It's disheartening to see leaders speak ill of not just each other at the dais, but staff, departments, citizens. And I know that some folks are saying, well, because of decorum, they don't hold those folks accountable. And I that's not how I lead. I mean, you look at what we did to hold Representative Simons accountable. I stood on the House floor and looked him in the eye and said, you hurt people. You were wrong. You don't deserve this seat. And so if people are behaving that way in elected office, yes, they were elected, but I don't think people elected people to be jerks. And that's, again, my leadership style is I'm someone who leads with curiosity, with compassion, but also making sure that we're doing the things that we need to do to move forward.
Josh, you supported last session the governor's property tax measure that provided a $1,600 property tax credit, but also capped local political subs at 3%. The city of Fargo has expressed some concerns about that cap and that 3%. Now that you're potentially on the other side, is a 3% cap the right move? As now potentially you're going to have to deal with that 3% cap.
Right. Yeah. And as you guys have talked plenty of times on the show, 3% is tough, especially for a lot of our political subdivisions when you look at the cost of benefits or healthcare specifically, or keeping up with inflation and the cost of projects. So it will be a tough reality, 3%. But I stand by my vote in the fact that political subs were given the opportunity to try to rein in property taxes and special assessments. And again, ended up on our laps in the legislature, so we did what we could. I believe that 3%, after we experience it now and we go into session in 2027, there are opportunities to have conversations about how do we make this work for the real world now. When your community that needs to buy a new fire truck and they go from $400,000 to $800,000 in 2 years, maybe there should be some opportunities to adjust that beyond just asking 60% of the voters to vote for it. And so, just like everything else we pass, it's a black and white law in a gray world. We're going to have to readjust it. And I hope as mayor to be a part of those conversations, working with other cities to make sure it benefits all of us, including the city of Fargo.
I want to talk a little bit about, better engagement with the public, better communication. You mentioned things like, letting people know about agendas better, letting them know about opportunities to public comment. That's a remarkable thing, because I agree with you that Fargo's not very good at that in some time under current leadership. And although it's remarkable given how much money they spend on their communications department.
Right.
Talk about that a little bit, because it is outsized. I know there was some dysfunction not that long ago. They saw some people leave, but the amount of money that Fargo spends on that, and then to have these issues where sometimes the public is blindsided by public business, how can that be?
Yeah. Well, I think as I've gotten engaged in the campaign and run, I've decided to run, I've learned a lot more about the previous communication department and the current communication department. And, I think first and foremost is they're tasked with a lot. So it comes down to prioritizing their work. And again, that's an opportunity for the commission to say, if we're funding an agency or a department that's going to help improve communication engagement, these are the priorities we would like to see. I'll give them credit. They have done some great work. And I even told the former director of that department that I appreciated some of the videos. I learned something about the auditor's office once, watching a video about what does the auditor's office do. I think that's important. But we have to prioritize. And for me, the priority is how do we get citizens to engage in their government, to understand how decisions are being made and why they're being made. I truly think that people would be less concerned about property taxes if they actually knew what they were doing. I look at how Fargo prioritizes our city services compared to my time in Bismarck. Snow removal, for instance. Fargo, our streets are spotless generally within at least a couple days, if not 24 hours of a snow event. You go to Bismarck and a lot of the side streets have a tough time being cleaned because of how they've prioritized or what they've done within their budgets. So do the citizens of Fargo want their streets cleaned within 24 hours because of the hardworking crews that we have as city employees? Or do we need to depend on contractors who can show up a few days later and by then it's packed down and it's immovable? So those are real conversations we can have when we engage with the public about the options of how do we prioritize services. And then the other part with that communications department, I was disappointed to come back from session and learn that actually their full title was Communications and Government Affairs. One of the critique me and some of my Cass County colleagues had about the city of Fargo was just their communication with us as legislators. I think they did a good job of making sure they were talking to the key legislator who was handling specific bills. So whether it was the water projects or the airport authority or things like that, but the rest of us didn't know really what was going on. And so to find out there was actually staff that had a title to engage with us, or I assumed to engage with us, and that wasn't happening. Under my leadership, that'll be one of our first priorities is how do we have strong relationships with our policymakers that represent us in Bismarck and in Washington, D.C., and how do we help them do their job so that they can come back with wins for our community?
Josh, I'm going to resist my desire to defend Bismarck's snow removal processes and move on to a different subject, but different priorities.
It wasn't meant to be a dig. It just was showing a difference that I've seen.
Well, snow gates or not snow gates is the biggest difference.
Right, and that's the thing. We don't do snow gates. You guys do snow gates, right? Yeah.
So one of the things that you said at your announcement is a desire to be a better neighbor to some of your colleagues. I think the perfect example there is what happened with the data center in Harwood and the sort of almost threats from the Fargo city government at different times and in meetings. How would you have handled that Harwood data center differently than the current administration did?
Yeah. Well, I don't know what conversations did or didn't happen prior to kind of the public dysfunction of that conversation. But first and foremost would be reaching out to the mayor of Harwood to talk about how are there opportunities for us to work together on this. I know that Fargo, one of their priorities was trying to make sure that they could help meet our budget needs or our priorities. And so the infrastructure fees that come out of the development of a project like that were important to the current commission. And in the end, again, it wasn't communicated well to the public. It was, all we knew was when meetings were happening. Instead of, as mayor, I would spend a lot of time communicating out to folks about why would this be important for us. If it is a budget priority and that's what it is, then let's communicate about that. If it's about making sure that Fargo gets to have a say in providing fire protection or other emergency services, then let's have that conversation. And maybe there's other ways of doing that than annexing or upsetting our neighbors. We had similar conversations with the development of the diversion to our neighbors to the south. And there are conversations happening now with the diversion authority in terms of, reclamation or making sure that we protect some of the historic farmsteads, graveyards, other infrastructure that means a lot to generations of North Dakotans. So how can we make that right or do our best job of being a good neighbor?
Talk a little bit about, and you touched on this about, communicating better with the legislature, but there's been times where, Fargo, I think, has been far too quick to rush to litigate or has adopted an attitude where they're sort of exempt from state law. And some of that, I think, is born of dysfunction between the legislature and Fargo. And trust me, I'm not defending everything the legislature does. I
Right.
understand that some of the policies that emerge from there are not, certainly not what I would write. That being said, I mean, obviously you're somebody you deeply familiar. We're a legislative leader. You know the process in Bismarck. Talk about Fargo's, like, your sort of past relationship with state government versus how you would like it to be if you're elected.
Yeah, I think I'd like it to be much more proactive. We do a good job of being an advocate for things like our water projects, infrastructure funding for roads. But there are other opportunities when we look at housing, transit, some of the money that goes through commerce for different startups and prioritizing different communities. And my style in that would be much more less about, well, first of all, I'm elected to be mayor of Fargo. So Fargo would come number one, but we can do better when we work with the other cities. And it might be the 5 other major cities and their needs. But I look at what I did this last session with transportation. The city of Fargo received less federal money for transit money. So we sat down with the director, or I sat down with the director of transit. And then I said, well, I assume Fargo or Bismarck, Grand Forks, and Minot probably has similar needs. Let's get them in the room. So we got those 4 transit directors together, and we were successful in securing funding for more transit, more state dollars for transit funding for the 4 communities that have fixed route transit. And now a study in the interim that's looking at how can we maybe find some dedicated long-term sustainable funding from the state to offset the irregularities that's happening from the federal government. And so that came down to saying, this is a need Fargo has. There's other communities that probably have it. Let's go talk to them. Let's work together and build a collaborative coalition to make it work. And we were successful in doing that.
Josh, you alluded earlier to Fargo potentially moving from a commission to a council model. I assume that includes wards, and you're moving towards a full-time mayor as well. Can you talk about, one, how full-time mayor will make the city better, but also if Fargo moves to a ward system, how that could make the government more responsive? I trust you, since you referenced it earlier and you've been in the paper supporting it, that you support that move.
I do, definitely. Fargo's the last city over 100,000 people in the country to have a commission form of government. So the council form of government, as I've learned, is how Bismarck and Minot and Grand Forks and Moorhead and many other communities do it. Now, we can do it differently, but we're actually restricted based on state law in what we can do when we go to that council form of government. And that's been a lesson I've learned through this. So for instance, we're looking to add 2 new commissioners or council members if this were to pass. So we'd have a total of 7. Our next option was 11 because of what state law said. We couldn't have said 8 or 9. It also requires that you either do wards or you do at large. And so we decided on wards. We would have, I think, preferred to say, let's have X number of wards and X number of at large, so you have that diversification to alleviate some of those concerns around parochialism that comes up with when you talk about wards. But I think it really comes down to better representation of people in Fargo. There is a major conversation happening about, again, an interchange happening on 64th Avenue South here in Fargo. I firmly believe if there was a commissioner who at least either lived in that neighborhood or represented that neighborhood specifically, there would have been more communication ahead of time, and those neighbors would have known this was coming instead of it changing through some rules or processes that, certainly the public may have been notified officially, but there was no direct conversation with those folks. So I equate it to, 33 legislators, 11 legislative districts in Cass County. Yes, we fight for what's important for us based on the city we might represent or the school district or the neighborhood. But at the end of the day, we usually do a good job of making sure we do what's best for our community.
Talk a little bit. You have one opponent in this race. We're going to be talking to her in the second half of the show, Denise Kolpack. You may have more, but for now, I guess she's the opposition, as it were, because these are competitive races. So talk a little bit. Why you and not her?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I've supported Denise in her previous race for the city commission. She's someone I like, and we've had conversations leading up to both of us deciding to announce. But I really think it comes down to you can't say you're going to be a change agent if you've been a part of the dysfunction for 4 years. And it's a matter of really giving us a fresh look, a fresh view on city government. Now, I know with that comes I need to learn a little bit more. Just like anyone who would step into my Senate seat, you have to learn before you can do. But I think that listening is an important part of what our city needs. When you look at the employee satisfaction survey that was done, or at least released last fall, it's clear that city employees in Fargo do not feel heard, that they don't feel they have an opportunity to share information, or they seem to feel like they're the last people to learn about things happening at the city. And so I think there's opportunities to do things differently. Whether if it's just Denise and I in the race, we'll draw our contrasts there. But as you've said, I know there's going to be a number of other people running. It's going to be a very popular race since it's open, and I'll continue to do what I can to convince voters. I think our turnout last night of over 150 people in the room to celebrate my announcement is a testament to the interest people have in someone new and the supporter base that I have already.
Josh, Denise said two things in her announcement that I felt may have been directed at you.
Yeah.
One of those things where she said, "I'm not a Democrat or a Republican. I'm a Fargoan." And then also that this is the only office she's going to run for. I mean, obviously, you've ran for other offices before. You're an elected Democrat. How would you respond to those two things? And again, she didn't direct those directly at you,
Right.
but it was clearly meant to contrast with you.
Yeah. I'm actually relieved I don't have to pretend I'm something I'm not in this race. It's very clear to everyone that I'm a Democrat. I'm a leader in this state. But all you have to look at is the things that I've accomplished in Bismarck in a supermajority Republican state. And that shows you that I'm able to work with all parties, all stakeholders to get things done. And so regardless of the party that I am a member of, I don't think that's going to show that people can look at how I've led and make a decision based on that. There's certainly going to be folks, because of this divisive nature of where we are in the world right now, that are going to make decisions based on, what they know about my political party. But what I love about these nonpartisan races is no one knows. There have been attempts to try to make city council races or school board races have a political party designation, and I'm glad that's been defeated. And honestly, I would love if legislative seats, I think we would see different people elected if people didn't have a letter to decide how they're going to vote.
That's funny because you say that, but you just got done saying you're glad you don't have to pretend. But on the other hand, it's like, I mean, all those nonpartisan races kind of allow people to pretend, doesn't it?
Well, you could call it pretended, or it's not a factor in play, right? And so for me, I know it's a factor. It's something I had to think about when running. But Fargo's elected Democratic mayors in the past. They've elected Republican mayors in the past. And when it comes to our local elections, I think people look the person they think who's going to be best for the job, because they don't have, especially for lower information voters who are going and they might have heard some things or they met you on your doorstep, but they didn't know what your political party is. That's not informing how they're going to vote, which I think is important, because there's not a democratic way to how to make sure the trash gets picked up or whether or not we're going to increase water fees or not. It all comes down to how do we lead a city and focus on those core services, especially at a time where we're having budget constraints. We really, I think, need to look at what are we doing, how do we do it better, and how can we do the things that folks in Fargo want done.
Well, Josh, I really appreciate you
Rob,
coming.
can I ask one more question? Yeah, just one more quick question. You your Senate term does last for another 2 years. Is your plan to resign from the Senate? Is your plan to do both jobs if you are successful?
Yeah, there's no way I'd be able to do both jobs. So if I was elected mayor, that would be my primary position. I would resign my
Because the law
seat
does
with
allow that. The law would
the
allow
law
you
does
to
allow
serve.
it. Yep. But
And we've
um,
had members of city
yep.
commissions or members of school boards serve in the legislature at the same time.
Yeah. And Fargo decided starting June of 26 that our mayor will be a full-time position. So we recognize it's a full-time plus workload. But it's, I think it would be a disservice to the folks of Fargo, as well as the people in my legislative district to try to do both. And so, if I'm elected mayor, that'll be my one job.
Well, Josh, I really appreciate it. Anything you need to tell us for people who want to find out more about your campaign, follow as you're out there sharing your message with people? How do they find you?
Yeah, certainly. I'm very active on Facebook and Instagram, just under my name, Josh or Joshua Boschee. And then you can go to joshuaboschee.com, Boschee, to learn more or reach out if you have questions or anything you want to help out with.
Josh, thanks.
Thanks, guys.
Josh.
Hey, Plain Talk listeners, have something to say? Call or text Plain Talk with your questions, comments, or headlines you want us to cover.
Just dial 701-587-3141. Leave us your message or shoot us a text with your name and location, and you could be featured on an upcoming show.
Hi, my name is Ashley, and I am in Jamestown.
Hey, Rob and Chad. My name's Tony. I live in Grand Forks.
That's 701-587-3141.
Call us, text us, vent, praise.
We want you in the conversation. Thanks for being part of the show.
Now let's get back to today's episode.
So I have to apologize in advance if the second half of this show seems a little weird. We have moved to a new podcasting platform, and it's great. It's working great. The problem is the stupid idiot who's talking to you right now doesn't know how to use it completely. It's not a problem with Riverside. It wasn't a problem with our guest who we were about to talk to, Denise Kolpack. It was the stupid idiot sitting behind this
I noticed you
keyboard
didn't say it wasn't the co-host's fault either. I mean,
it wasn't the coach. Chad also had nothing to do with it.
I just turned on.
Matt,
I don't know what I'm doing.
Our producer, Matt Fern, had nothing to do with it. It was all me. We did an entire 30-minute wonderful interview with Denise Kolpack and didn't record anything of Denise. So what we actually had, the video is funny to watch because Chad and I talking and asking questions and then sitting there staring blankly at the camera while there's nothing. Anyway, that was my fault. Now you just listened to an interview with Josh Boschee that we recorded on Wednesday. We're now recording this on Friday, January 9th. And by the way, this episode was supposed to be Wednesday's episode. So we ended up moving the show we recorded with Drew Wrigley to Wednesday. It was a whole thing. So I apologize if there's been weirdness in the podcast this week. It's my fault. This new system is great. Eventually, I will figure out how to do it. Enough of that. Denise Kolpack, welcome to the show. Now, Denise is a current member of the Fargo City Commission. She has now announced that she's running for mayor. She's one of two announced candidates, Josh Boschee being the other. And as we started out with the Josh Boschee interview, and as we started out with the previous Denise Kolpack interview that you're never going to see, why are you running for mayor, Denise?
Yeah, well, thank you for having me again. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you for doing this again, by the way. We wasted a half hour of your time. I appreciate you being gracious enough to come back on.
Of course. I'm proven and I'm ready. And I'll start with this. I really, truly believe this. My entire career, I've been preparing for this job in so many ways. I've managed organizations. I've managed people. I've led and managed very well multi-million-dollar budgets. And then for the last 3.5 years, I've shown up every day at City Hall to learn this job, to understand how this city works, to understand the people, the culture, and what the issues are. And I'm ready.
Hey, Denise, thanks again for coming on and thank you for running. I appreciate anybody who's willing to put their name on a ballot. One of the things that you have been in the city commission for 3.5 years, and we're talking a lot about Fargo, and maybe it's time for some change in Fargo. And I guess my first question to you is, how can you be the change candidate when you've been on the commission for 3.5 years and been the deputy mayor for the last year or so?
Well, first of all, I'll say that by being in City Hall every day, there have been many times where I have not been afraid to challenge what maybe would have been other decisions being made that would have been more impactful and more negative. I've challenged the results of decisions that have been made actively and how we tell the public about them by being there every day. But I understand how the city works. And you can't just show up and know what the issues are or think you know what the issues are without knowing the systems, the people, the culture, and expect to be able to make change right away. And I'm ready. I understand what the issues are. I have a very good working relationship with Team Fargo across the board, including public safety. And I want to get to work, and I'm ready.
Denise, one thing, we talked a little bit, and I think the public has seen from headlines and reporting a little bit of dysfunction on the commission. Some of the commission meetings turn into spectacles, a lot of name calling, some ugliness. And the thing about that, I was thinking, like, obviously that's the status quo. I would hope we all, all of us of good faith who want to see, Fargo be well governed, want to get away from that. But it's also kind of a reality of the times we live in, where that sort of politics is very much in vogue right now. So I guess, I mean, how do you navigate that as Fargo's? I mean, if you're going to be the mayor, you're the executive, you're wielding the gavel at those commission meetings. How do you, how do you police some of that and try to, like, keep, even though the public has an appetite? I mean, let's be honest. Some of the public have an appetite for it. Certainly, some elected officials are delivering, whether it's at the national level or the local level, are delivering on that. How do you move away from that and keep Fargo focused on the business it needs to attend to?
Well, I think you said this last time, but let's make government boring again. I think people are really tired of this, and I hear it. I have constituents tell me enough. I just had a conversation with a constituent yesterday who said people bring popcorn to watch the meetings now, and Fargo deserves better. So, from my opinion, I lead by example. I don't subscribe to that. I'm very professional at the dais and with constituents, and I will continue to be. But what's really important for the public to know too, I think, is I have led several organizations as board chair for over my last 30 years, serving on a number of boards and commissions. I know how to use a gavel. I understand parliamentary procedure and protocol. And by the way, we have governance policies that articulate what are the expectations. We need to hold people accountable. So to your point, Rob, I will not be afraid to use the gavel at the dais. If we need to take a break and come back and reconvene to get decorum in order at the dais, I won't be afraid to do that. And if, let's have one meeting where that happens 5 times and the meeting's 5 hours long. I think you're going to see behavior change.
So Denise, we've talked a lot about sort of some of the issues going on in Fargo, and I think the phrase I used the other day was the gang that can't shoot straight, because it feels like there's just one thing after another. And this is a statewide podcast. There might be people who are saying, why should we care about the city government of Fargo? But I think what listeners need to understand is what happens with the Fargo School District, the city of Fargo. We end up hearing about it at the state capitol, right? I mean, legislators not from Fargo will often respond to things that, oh, did you hear what happened in Fargo? So, we talk about the annex issue and how that was in the paper. We talk about the issues regarding the murder and the lack of press conference, and then chasing down the wrong guy in Minneapolis. You've had a front row seat for a lot of this. So how do you change because you have to change the culture, but then you also have to change the perception of sort of that,
Right.
that Fargo can be governed. What's your first step to sort of send that message that hey, Fargo's got its stuff together now?
So step number 1 is the mayor needs to have daily morning meetings with administration and understand what is on the schedule today. But that is also what's on the schedule today needs to be aligned with an overall list of strategic priorities that we know we're working on day in and day out, and what we're not working on. And then we have to get ahead of it. We have to talk about what's coming. We have to plan for how are we going to bring the public along in these issues with facts. And believe me, my career in communication and marketing, I've never subscribed to spin. I've always subscribed to telling facts, getting it out, even if you don't know all the information, getting back to people when you do. But you have to build trust with integrity. And I take that approach in every decision I make, and I would take that approach as mayor. Can I have,
One thing.
go
Oh,
ahead.
sorry. Yeah, go ahead. No, go ahead, Denise.
You're the point, Chad. The other thing I want to make, to your point about why does it matter? Why does Fargo matter across North Dakota? I'm a member of the North Dakota League of Cities. I've been so surprised at all of my meetings that I attend, how many elected officials from other cities come up and tell me, we watch your meetings. We want to follow what you do or not do, right?
Yep.
I mean, it is such an example for the state. And then the last point I'll make about Bismarck is building those relationships is a very important part of the job of this position. You have to be able to work on with both sides of the aisle, which I have for 3 decades. I lobbied and worked with both sides of the aisle. I had respect, and I was unbiased, and I was always professional. And I think that's a really important part of this job.
Obviously, Fargo's just coming through a budget cycle where you started with a pretty big shortfall, and the city's had to do some belt tightening. And on top of that, the legislature, as part of its property tax reform, which I think is proving pretty popular with the public so far, with the credits they're all getting on their property tax bills. I think people are pretty happy about that for the time being. But that obviously puts a further fiscal restraint on local governments like Fargo. So what is your philosophy? What is your approach to how to navigate some of that? The fact that Fargo already probably had to do some belt tightening, and then on top of that, the legislature comes in with a 3% cap. Is that cap something you can live with?
That's a great. First of all, I appreciate the work the legislature did for property tax relief. I, as a homeowner, appreciated the $1,600 credit myself. I mean, it makes a difference. So I very much appreciate that. I've had subsequent meetings with legislators since the session and the 3% cap. It was a tough budgeting cycle. That's that. And so how are we going to continue to offer property tax relief to the residents, but have a formula that truly works long-term for cities, counties, and other political subs? And I think there's going to have to be some work and collaboration to maybe tie the 3% cap into a different form. I still support some kind of cap, but connect it with an inflationary percentage, or CPI, or something that is more reasonable when you look at what the expenses are to every city and municipality right now. In addition to, I shared this last time, 75% of our budget is people and benefits. And we have to compete with the private sector for talent. And to do that, we have to be competitive with our wages. So that's a real factor, along with, the cost of technology. So real
Denise,
challenges. Go ahead, Chad.
The other thing on property taxes, and I think Fargo just went through this with a new apartment complex that got some tax abatements, and then I think the school board said no. Do you think it's time for large cities, Fargo specifically, to start maybe taking a harder look at sort of giving away these property tax breaks to businesses, developers, those kind of things? So I think that's one of the frustrations we've seen across the state, where a woman owns her house, an older couple owns their house for 30 years, and they're paying full freight. And then a business comes in and they don't have to pay property taxes. Do we need to look at that closer?
We are looking at that, and that'll be a priority for me. That's part of our land development code work we're doing right now. But I will share, over the course of the decades that Fargo has offered incentives, first of all, every request has a but-for test, to make sure that it's really necessary. And secondly, in total, we've had a 40-to-1 return. So
Right.
the valuation has truly made an impact. And once those TIFs have expired, that's forever we get that property tax. So those investments have proven out to be very beneficial long-term, likely reducing property tax. That, property taxes would have to probably be another 4% higher without the new investment and growth we're seeing through the work of incentives.
So, Rob, can I just follow up with one other question? And I think one of the things when looking at incentives is, where are we building? Are we?
Right.
Is it somewhere where it's already a developed place where we can get that return, like a downtown? And it's another thing when we have to add more city utilities, more streets to plow, all those other things. So, is that
That's
part
right.
of what you're looking at? Is these have more benefits than these other places out maybe in the outskirts of Fargo?
100%. No more leapfrogging, very systematic growth, to your point. Making sure that we're incorporating green space, walkability. I mean, we just finished a 2-year process of that growth plan, and so it'll be very methodical, but associated with that will be a new look at those incentives. Yeah, exactly.
So obviously you have an opponent, and we've been talking. I'm sure we're going to get more opponents or more candidates in this race before
Yeah.
the filing deadline. But for the time being, it's you and Josh Boschee, and I would say, Josh has been in the legislature for a long time. A lot of people know him. A lot of people like him. You've been in public service now for a while. I would say you're probably two of the top candidates. Why you and not him? What gives you the edge? With voters, do you think?
Because I know the job. I've been there for 3.5 years, and not just like for every other meeting Monday. I literally have taken this job seriously from the beginning, and I've worked full time. Some weeks more than that, literally. And as deputy mayor now, I also substitute for some of the events the mayor can't attend. So I've been doing more of the ambassador part of the job as well. But I'm in the office every day, and I know what the issues are. I know how the city works. I know the culture. By the way, we haven't talked about this yet. The employee engagement survey that came out shared some really startling information that I predicted on my evaluation of our city administrator, because I'm in the office every day and I know what the issues are. And we have some real work to do when it comes to Team Fargo. Without Team Fargo, Fargo wouldn't be Fargo. We wouldn't have the services we have. We wouldn't have the institutional knowledge that is so important to run a city efficiently and effectively. And we have to address those concerns.
So, Denise, on that front, how do you balance? I mean, obviously, you're a governance leader. You're not the person who's supposed to be in the office, sort of directing staff and all those things. So, how do you balance that governance role with also needing to know what's going on? I think that's often a really difficult thing for people in roles like city commissions and councils. How would you approach that?
Yeah, the person that is in charge of leading the city and the team of city is the city administrator. We have very clear governance policies that the mayor has, responsibility to work with the city administrator, but the mayor should never be surprised either as the leader of the board. And that has to start with a really good working relationship with the top official, the city administrator. And again, to my earlier comments, that starts every morning with a stand up on what's on the docket. What can I help support? What do I need to address? I mean, the constituents still lead out to the commissioners and the mayor and have to know the information to help solve the problems. But you're elected for a reason. You represent the people first and foremost, and that's the voice you bring to the table every day.
How would you think that would change with Fargo moving towards a full-time mayor? I would think the relationship. It's one thing to have a part-time mayor who's part of the commission. It seems to me, and maybe this is the wrong way to put it, that the city administrator's role is diminished, but it almost, if we have a full-time mayor and a full-time city administrator, is that redundant? Is it, if we go to a full-time mayor, is it now incumbent upon you to be more involved in those ways?
The mayor has been full time for the last 15 years. He wasn't paid full time. But I will tell you, the mayor was in the office every day working full time.
Okay.
And in these last 4 years, I have witnessed it myself. The mayor clearly is a full time job. So I don't see that changing. Obviously the fact that it's now officially full time and it's paid full time is a change, but it requires full time attention.
Denise, one of the other things that's sort of been in the news over the last several months, more than that, is I think I described it as the exploding size of the communications department. And can you respond to that sort of idea that Fargo has this very large communications department? It's had some turnover, but just is that a fair assessment that the comms department in the city of Fargo has exploded in terms of size?
No, what happened was that you were seeing growth across all departments in the need for communications. And the fact that the department ended up with 12 employees was really the consolidation of other existing people in other departments under one umbrella. And so, that was never explained well, in all fairness, by the staff. But now what we're seeing is kind of for instance, the police department used to have 3 positions that went under the umbrella then of the communications director. Now you're seeing kind of a reallocation. The police is going to take the communication team again. Already we have fewer staff again in the communication department. But when you compare the size of the communication team across communities our size, it was never a number that wasn't relative and out of line with other cities our size when it comes to communications. It's 24/7. The other factor that the communication team managed was open records requests, which was a huge part of their time. And now that's changing. That's going to the new city auditor structure. So that's something that's going away. So you're going to see fewer number of communication members because of different reasons. But I'll share this. The number of social channels that the communication team manages, the amount of work that was expected of them every day. What was found out from our research we did with Zen City from the citizens is they receive the majority of their information from the channels that the city operates, not from the media, but they go to the website, they go to the social channels, they expect it to be there, and it takes a team to deliver that information to the citizens.
Do you feel like some of the information that's there is kind of asking cops if a hot dog's a sandwich or not? And
Yeah.
I'll be honest with you, Fargo's not the only one doing this, and I'm not a big fan of it anywhere. I mean, Minot does it too, and it's like I don't need my city to entertain me. I don't know why we're spending taxpayer resources, and if anything, you're making it harder for me to find. Like, you're cluttering up the social feeds when I'm trying to find out what the holiday schedule is for my garbage pickup, and I'm getting videos about cutesy videos about. I just don't care. I don't need my government to be cute.
Yeah.
Just tell me when you're going to pick my garbage up.
Yeah, I appreciate that you don't appreciate it, Rob, but a lot of people do. And I'll share that the department uses all channels, but by building organic viewing on social this year, as an example, they were able to cut their budget by 75% and rely more on social because people are engaging with it. The other outcome and the reason for it is that it is a recruitment tactic. We have recently recruited several police officers who like the fact that it's a community platform. It has community engagement and the public appreciates it and values it. So it's been effective.
Rob hates cute things. I mean, that's my takeaway from this whole thing.
That was There's paint me as the curmudgeon, I guess.
If there's clever things on social media, Rob hates it. So I want to talk about the relationship with Harwood around the data center and how that all went down. I mean, I think, again, from the outside looking in, it felt like the whole thing was just sort of a disaster. I mean, it appeared like Fargo was trying to pick on their little brother, and then you had one of your colleagues, Dave Pepcorn, basically threatening that the firefighters from Fargo wouldn't help out there, which is ridiculous for all of us who know firefighters. They're gonna save people. What is your take on all this? What should the mayor have done differently? Because it did look like the big brother is picking on the little brother here a little bit and trying to take advantage.
Yeah, we look like a bully. I would have done it completely differently. It should have started with collaboration with the mayor of Harwood. I'll tell you that, when we voted on the initial annexation as commissioners, 3 of us were not part of those original conversations. Only 2 of them were. I don't think we were told the whole story. And I'll share this. It has to start with working and building relationships with area municipality and their leaders. And I've already done that. I reached out and sent a message ahead of my announcement to every mayor in the region and let them know I was running, and I hope to have a relationship with them. That'll be my approach. It should have been a very cordial, how can we do this, what's best for the region conversation, and not a power grab.
How do you feel about the data center? I mean, I know a lot of people have strong feelings. It's hard to discern. Sometimes I feel like we focus on loud voices a lot.
Yeah.
But I don't know. How do you feel about the data center? I mean, are you glad that sort of thing's coming to our part of the world?
It was kind of presented that it's inevitable it's coming to our part of the world. So how are we going to manage it? I think what I saw was not good community engagement along the way to bring people along, overall, even in Harwood. And so, if
Good community. So like Applied Digital, you're saying could have
right,
done more community outreach.
exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. It was just so much behind the scenes, kind of a done deal when it came to the forefront. And that's just not how you treat people. That is not. Yeah, I believe in transparency. This my entire life. I've worked on open records, open meetings, support sunshine laws, all of it. I believe in that. I'm married to a reporter. And so it's very important to me.
So we talked about your one opponent who's in the race right now, Josh Boschee, and from my perspective, I think both of you are exceptionally qualified for this job. I think
Thank
there's
you.
lots of rumors about potentially other people who might currently serve on the city commission also jumping into this race, Michelle Turnberg and Dave Pepcorn. So let's say they jump in. I don't know when we're going to have you on here again, Denise. Why are you a better
Yeah.
pick than those two? And I will say in our previous interview, you alluded to two commissioners that were problematic at times. You didn't name their names, but I'm going to assume that it's Pepcorn and Turnberg who are the ones that are creating the popcorn eating while watching these meetings. Why are you better qualified than those two? Why should you be the pick over those two?
Well, besides just the sheer credentials of my 40-year career in leading organizations and people and budgets, being involved actively in the community, my record in collaboration and nonpartisanship, which is so important for this job because policy is such a big part of this. You have to be professional, number one. I think I lead by example. Number two, I think Fargo deserves decorum and deserves the respect as North Dakota's largest city. And you have to model that. And my entire life I've been known to model that. And I do my homework. I show up for every single city commission meeting, having read the information, which I can tell you not everyone always reads the packet, including the consent agenda. At least I glance at everything on the consent agenda. It's a long agenda, but I'm ready, and I do my homework for every meeting. And if I have questions, I ask them ahead of time. Often you'll see me at commission meetings not asking maybe some of the detailed questions because I know the information. So I'm qualified and I'm prepared and I know the job.
Denise, if people want to follow you as you campaign, find out more about you, listen to your updates or whatever, how can they find you?
You can go to kolpackforfargo.com and it's all right there. My platform's right there. Why I'm running. There's a video there that really gives you a taste of who I am personally as well. And so I hope people check it out.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Denise.
You bet. Thank you.
Hey, Plain Talk listeners, have something to say? Call or text Plain Talk with your questions, comments, or headlines you want us to cover.
Just dial 701-587-3141. Leave us your message or shoot us a text with your name and location, and you could be featured on an upcoming show.
Hi, my name is Ashley, and I am in Jamestown.
Hey, Rob and Chad. My name's Tony. I live in Grand Forks.
That's 701-587-3141.
Call us, text us, vent, praise.
We want you in the conversation. Thanks for being part of the show.
Now let's get back to today's episode.
Welcome back. Just finished up interviews with both of the candidates, although done on again, separate days. Because it's again, I kind of mess things up. So again, if you hear kind of weirdness
Rob,
about us
would you
talking about the
stop
wrong day,
beating yourself up over this? You made a mistake.
feel bad. I feel really bad that I wasted your time and I wasted her time and I didn't get it all recorded right. But anyway, we are heard from both of those candidates. I think your remark that they're both, if you're thinking about like just in terms of resume, familiarity with public policy, these are two very equivalent candidates. They're going to have some differences on approach. I mean, Boschee has experience in Bismarck. I think that would, even though he's a Democrat, Republican majority, I think that probably lends itself to a better relationship with Bismarck. Denise Kolpack has more experience in local government. So kind of an interesting choice there. And of course, they're not going to be the last two candidates to get in this race. But
Yeah, I mean, I think again for listeners statewide who are like, why are we spending time on the Fargo city? This is going to be maybe the most interesting race in the state moving forward. I don't think we're going to have any big fights in the general election, but so I think this is going to be.
There's some legislative races in Minot that they're shaping up to be pretty interesting.
They're
I mean,
right
get
in
your
the
popcorn.
primaries. Yeah, that's true. But it's an important race, and the reality is Fargo's the biggest city in North Dakota, and it sort of moves a lot of policy statewide. Both of them are qualified candidates. I think the biggest difference from my perspective is, Denise is talking about she knows the job. I think in a campaign that can sometimes be difficult when you know so much and you're so in the weeds. And I think Josh, you talked about his time in Bismarck. I mean, being in a super minority. I know she talked a little bit about, have to work with both sides. And the reality is Josh had to work with both sides. He was in a caucus of 5 last time. So both qualified, both are going to have slightly different approaches to the campaign, but both know their stuff.
I think you're right. And it's really interesting to me, sort of we talk about the advantage of incumbency all the time. It can be a disadvantage too. Like if the public is maybe dissatisfied with the status quo, and Denise Kolpack's not really the incumbent, but she's kind of the incumbent. She is the deputy mayor. She's been on the city commission alongside the mayor for a while now. So, that's something that's gonna cut both ways.
Yeah.
For her. So that's gonna whereas someone like Boschee has a little bit of he's got his whole legislative track record.
But he's got a fresh look on the city.
But he's fresh to city government. So, that's gonna be very interesting.
And here's the other thing, not living in Fargo. I don't know. I mean, it seems to me like there's lots of not very good governing going on in the city of Fargo. Is that how how do the people in Fargo feel about Mayor Mahoney? I noticed in some news story, he graded his time as mayor as an A, which I think is always really.
What else are you? I mean, I would hate to be asked that question. What else are you supposed to say?
Yeah, B plus. Always room for improvement, but I think that's what it's going to come down to. If the people of the city city of Fargo are happy, they might go with the person who's been at the table. Otherwise, I think they might be looking at some outside.
And it's not like we really have any polling. I mean, all we really have to go on is perception. And again, sometimes the loudest voices color that perception. I mean, sometimes there's a feeling, oh, all these people are upset, and then you find out the larger electorate shows up to vote, and it's like, oh, actually, they weren't that upset.
So I think the other advantage that Josh has in this race is he has a political network from running several times. He has a base of supporters who will, he had 150 people who came out to his announcement, right? There's some enthusiasm. There's some folks who will run through walls. Denise has ran once, and so I just don't think you have that as much goodwill built up with your supporters. So again, it'll be interesting who raises money, and does money matter, and who votes. I mean, it's a primary election. I think it's going to be a fun race to watch.
Yeah, it certainly is. Let's switch gears a little bit and talk what's going on in Minnesota right now. It's hard to ignore what's happening to our eastern neighbors. We all saw the death of the shooting of that woman. We all saw the videos. And it's become, I have a column that's actually going to run over the weekend where I say everything's a Rorschach test now. I mean, everything, we all look at the same videos. We all read the same eyewitness accounts and reporting and reach wildly different conclusions. And I will tell you, I'm not somebody, there's some angles of that video that makes it look like, the car was lurching at that officer. There's others that make it look like he wasn't really in the way. What scares me the most about this is that we've created a situation where there's so many bad actors. You can't really trust the FBI saying that they're going to remove the state of Minnesota from the investigation into the shooting. Can we trust that this administration is going to conduct a fair interview when the president of the United States has already announced, the Secretary of Homeland Security, they've already announced their conclusions on it? I mean, Secretary Kristi Noem, who's in charge of ICE, she declared this woman a domestic terrorist. Based on what, I don't know. And so it really worries me that I mean, everybody's leaping to immediate conclusions about this video. There's been no investigation. There's a woman who's died. And we just can't trust that the people who are in charge of the men with the guns, the men and women with the guns, can't be trusted to be good faith actors. That terrifies me, Chad.
So, first of all, I mean, I think the human element of all of this. I mean, I saw a picture of the bloody driver's seat with stuffed animals and other signs of. I mean, she's a mom, right? And I've talked to some attorneys who have been involved in police shootings in the past, and that attorney told me like the biggest concern he has about this whole thing was not the officer who shot and ultimately killed this person, but the first ICE officer who just aggressively approached her vehicle, started yanking on the door, whatever. She clearly freaked out, right? I mean, and then moved forward. Also, the officer's not supposed to be in front of the car, and that's like there's a lot of different things. When you have all of these federal agents, ICE agents, who are not necessarily trained in de-escalation in these situations, you're going to have these things, and it scares the hell out of me. And I worry about Minneapolis because we're not that far from George Floyd, and I worry about the citizens continue like how do you calm this down? Walz is trying to calm it down. I mean, to his credit, Walz is trying to calm this down, but there's just so much energy, and the video's scary. I mean, it's you say that people see here. I saw somebody get murdered. I mean, that's what I saw. Maybe that's not
That's
fair.
a human being. I mean, whether ultimately we can conclude, was she in the right? Was she in the wrong? Did she do everything she was supposed to do? The other thing, I think your point about the law, they're the professionals, right? They are not supposed to be creating or contributing to dangerous situations. Even if she was in the wrong to drive at that officer,
Right.
who created that situation in the first place? And we talk about like they're not trained in de-escalation. I would offer that the mission statement that they're getting from this administration is to go in there and to be as aggressive and provocative as possible. The decision, the propaganda videos we see on social media, you want to talk about government being clever on social media. Follow ICE's social media accounts. Follow Kristi Noem. They are there to be as provocative. They are trying to invite this conflict. And remember that the conflict that they're inviting is with Americans. They're saying, well, we're there to do our job. We're there to arrest illegal immigrants. I am for arresting illegal immigrants and deporting them. I am for that. They are making a choice, though, to enforce these laws in the most aggressive, most sensationalist way possible. They are trying to maximize. And so, of course, what did we expect we were going to get when you're enforcing the law that way?
When I saw a video outside of, I think it was Roosevelt High School in Minneapolis as well, and I think Jesse the Body was there the next day because that's where he went to school. But there's federal agents there who were, I don't know if they were trying to arrest people or whatever, but I saw a student throw a snowball at them. Should the student have thrown a snowball at these agents? No. Absolutely not. Then the guy responded by firing, paintballs or some sort of tear gas or something from very close range at this kid. Again, to your point, they're supposed to be the professionals. The response to a snowball being thrown at you is not to fire tear gas at some kid's face from 10 feet away. I mean, like, we have to calm things down, and we can say, well, she should have just listened to the cops. Well, yes, she should have listened to the cops. There's lots of times where people don't listen to the cops or they don't get shot in the face. And so,
but also, we're talking about masked cops who are kitted out like they're patrolling Fallujah and are hopped up on messaging from their bosses in this administration that makes it feel like they're being deployed to enemy territory. So, that bothers me. But if we want to talk about de-escalating, I think we also got to talk about like Mayor Frey and some of the things that he's been saying, even some of the things that Tim Walz has been saying. You can't say calm down and then also indulge your propensity for some of the rhetoric that they're deploying against the Trump administration. Because the problem is, and the thing is I've said plenty of things about the Trump. I've said plenty of things just in the last 180 seconds, but that are pretty provocative about the administration. The problem is, when they do it, I feel like it just becomes a cycle. They say it, and Trump says it, and they say it, and Trump says it. And part of me, like Mayor Frey, I feel like is part of the problem here. Not the problem, but a part of the problem.
Let's talk this through a little bit, because I understand what you're saying completely, but I also understand there's a lot of angry people in Minneapolis who maybe feel like their voices aren't being heard, that need to hear their leaders doing that stuff to help calm them down.
Okay.
Right. I mean, I just think that Mayor Frey, Governor Walz, they're in a position where they don't have any, like, they can't govern their own people, because you've got this. And what happened to conservatives not wanting federal government to come in and run cities and states? My God, Rob, what is happening?
Here. I wish I had an answer for that. I don't know. I've spent my entire life as a conservative saying states' rights, saying, we should be suspicious of government power. What is the most awesome power that the government wields? Police power.
Right.
This is scary stuff. But I getting back, I guess, to the point, and again, I understand the anger, but I also remember during, that was sort of the excuse when we were watching protesters burn buildings down during George Floyd. Well, their anger is righteous. That only gets you so far. Like maybe anger is not the problem. I understand why people are. I don't want to tell people not to be angry, but if you act out, like if you throw a snowball at a cop, or you show up and you create these spectacles, you're helping them. Helping them.
Yeah, and I think Walz tried to make that case. I mean, several times, where peaceful protesting, go for it. Don't be a jerk, right? If you're a jerk, that's what they want you to do. That just escalates the situation. But I also, like, watching that video, man, I was angry. Like, I wasn't like go out on the street and throw stuff at cops, but was I feeling get ice the F out of here? Yeah, I was feeling that. I'm still sort of feeling that. I mean, that video and just sort of the stuff afterwards, it just doesn't feel like this should be happening in our country. And that, I mean, it's sad, it's terrifying, and I don't know what the path forward is.
I'm afraid that the path forward is, I was talking to somebody, a Republican in our state, and we were kind of sharing some of our thoughts, and he made a point about, nobody's thinking even 15 minutes into the future right now. And so all the Republicans who are out there, this is what I'm really afraid of, is all the Republicans out there who are cheering on Trump's aggressive exercise, and I would say often unlawful exercise of his executive authority, trampling states' rights, trampling individual rights. They're cheering it on because they don't like the targets right now. They're cheering it on because they do like the guy who's doing it right now. And I'm going to tell you what happens if a President Newsom in the future, or a President Hillary, or whoever else, we might elect from the other side. What happens when they're in charge? Right. And they decide, they have the left-wing base saying, oh, look at this pipeline protests in North Dakota. Let's send in federal agents to brutalize the local North Dakotans, under the name of we're going to keep North Dakota safe. North Dakota's leadership won't keep the state safe. We will. And all the things that Trump says. Imagine if a Democrat's doing that. That's how this works. That's why we have these restraints built into the Constitution, built into federal law, built into our 3 branches of government. That's why these things exist, so that no matter who holds power, there are checks and there is accountability. And Trump is throwing all that out. And there's one day we're going to have a president that you don't like. And I think you're going to want some of the checks and accountability that Trump is flushing right now.
Yeah, and I think there's so many folks on the left right now who would welcome that, right? I mean, I think there is some of the
hardliners, because hardliners on the left too, and I think they would be just fine. They would be just fine with using ICE or whatever other federal or the National Guard, whoever else they can, to brutalize conservatives right now, and that's not right either.
Yeah, but I mean, and I going back to Kristi Noem, her having a press conference shortly after this and making some, like, accusations that just were not true. It's like she knew that she didn't know this stuff was on film, so she thought she could just make up her own narrative. They continue to make up their own narrative about what happened here. And not to mention, like, the first cop on the scene, pulls up with this pickup truck, unmarked, with a mask on, going at, like, I can see if I'm this woman who ended up getting murdered, I'd be a little terrified as somebody approaches my, like,
Again, they are making the choice to sensationalize. They are making the choice to make this as aggressive and provocative as they possibly can. And now, that's a choice they're making. Did the woman do everything right? I'm reserving judgment. I want to see more information. I suspect the answer to that's probably no. But who created the situation? Right? And who's ultimately responsible? It's our government.
And it's not that ICE agent's responsibility to decide the punishment is death for not listening to a police officer.
Also, I am terrified. How can we accept that the federal government is going to properly investigate this and bring proper accountability to it when the top officials in the federal government have already decided ICE did nothing wrong?
And within 24 hours, pushing Minnesota out from the
not even
investigation.
24. Yeah. I mean, they're holding the press conference within hours of it happening and have already concluded everything's fine. She's the enemy. She's a terrorist. We're fine. You don't know. I would be surprised if Kristi Noem had even seen the video at that point. So, frustrating stuff.
It's a terrible situation. We got to get better. I don't know. I think following that shooting, it's about as down as I've ever been. Frankly, what it felt like is a little bit after Charlie Kirk got shot. Well, after Charlie Kirk got shot, I had this pit in my stomach, like, oh my gosh, how are we going to get through it? It feels like that again.
I get
and
that
that's
pit
happening every couple months.
Every new escalation, every new act of violence. I mean it left and right. I mean, when I felt that way when Donald Trump was almost assassinated on I mean, that was terrifying. And my feelings about Donald Trump, well known at this point. It made me sick to think of his friends and his family and his loved ones who had to watch him almost die. All the people that love him. What a terrible thing. We can do better as a country.
And Rob, a terrible thing for our country too, to see our leaders, really no matter if it's, and it was just the anniversary of Gabby Giffords getting shot 10 years ago. I mean, this stuff it keeps happening. It's just accelerating.
It's escalating though. I mean, it feels like the cycle is faster and faster. All right. We're going to put a pin in it there. Thank you so much for listening. As always, remember, you can always participate in Plain Talk. Give us a call or text, 701-587-3141. You can leave a voicemail, send us a text message. We'll incorporate it into the show. plaintalknd.com. It's a good place to go to follow the podcast. Follow us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts. YouTube's a great place to go. Thank you so much for listening. By the way, I suppose I should pitch what we're doing next week. Coming up next week,
Congresswoman on Wednesday, don't we?
Congresswoman Julie Fedorchak's going to be on the show. She's going to be on the show Wednesday next week, and then on Friday, I talked a little bit about a fun legislative primary. Probably two of the most high-profile legislators in Bismarck. Maybe not necessarily for positive things. Representative Lori Van Winkle, Representative Jeff Hoverson, they just got primary challengers. We're going to be talking to them on Friday.
I've never been so excited to see two bankers get into a legislative race in my life.
We'll talk about that next week. Thank you so much for listening. We'll talk again.
That's it for today on Plain Talk, the voice of North Dakota politics. Plain Talk is a production of Forum Communications Company. Got a question, comment, or suggestion? Leave us a voicemail or send us a text message at 701-587-3141. That's 701-587-3141. If you haven't subscribed to Plain Talk yet, you can find us on YouTube or your favorite podcast platform like Spotify or Apple Podcasts. For those of you who are already hooked, give us a rating or review. And don't forget to share or tell a friend. Special thanks to my co-host Chad Oban, and from myself and everyone at Plain Talk, thanks for listening.